Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Did everyone enjoy the film? Sure, most of you have seen it a few times. Anyone seen it for the first time tonight? Yeah. Wow, quite surprised by that. So, the main man, Graeme Park.
Not the main man.
So, it's, for me sitting here, it's a massive, massive pleasure to sit and chat to this guy, so I'll try and hold it together as much as I can.
Oh, yeah, but I'm sat next to a chef. I'd rather be a chef.
Well, we'll see about that. So we're going to start with the film, obviously, because that's what we've all just sat and watched. So 24-hour party people and the Haçienda. Watching that, I mean, it brings back so many memories of that time. For me, mainly based in Leeds, but the same energy and the same feeling based around the clubs. Do you think it's a fair portrayal of the Haçienda in that time of the film?
Oh, those scenes in the film are just really, really accurate. It's exactly what it was like. The film's actually about Factory Records, not Haçienda.
Yeah.
But the Haçienda was part of Factory Records. But they built, because they knocked the Haçienda down literally a month before they started shooting. So they recreated the interior of the Haçienda to the minutest detail. It was uncanny because me, Tony Wilson and Peter Hook were invited by Channel 4 News to watch the Haçienda stage being torn to bits by a JCB, and it was horrible. And when I drove home, I thought, why did I do that? That's an image that will be forever in my mind. A few weeks later, I walk into the Haçienda, like those scenes there, and it was exactly like it was. And so, lots of films have tried to recreate clubs, like Studio 54. That's not like a club at all, those scenes, but those are uncannily accurate.
Yeah, it seems to be real people in the club.
Well, there was, because we invited people, the extras in the scenes were people who used to go to Haçienda.
Yeah.
And me, Mike Pickering, John Silver, we DJ'd on the night, and Steve Coogan was just uncannily like Tony Wilson. That's what, because when I went out for the shooting of the film, it's like went up to the DJ box and knocked on the door, and the door opened and Mike Pickering was there. I'm like, oh my God, this is surreal.
Yeah.
But yeah, very accurate.
So Tony Wilson, I'm skipping a question here, but it seems you brought his name up now. Tony Wilson, I've read a few books on him. How Not to Run a Club, obviously.
Well, How Not to Run a Record Label.
Yeah.
Peter Hook's book, How Not to Run a Nightclub. People think it's fiction. It's not. It's fact.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was like.
So tell us about the man, Tony Wilson.
He was great, actually. I mean, I was familiar with him from his television shows. So It Goes was a fantastic show, and he was just a lovely man. Really. Kind of encouraged people to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
As you saw in the film, that is exactly how he ran everything.
Yeah.
Just let people do what they wanted, which was often a bad idea. But it worked at the end. But can I just say, when I used to go, before I was involved with Haçienda, I was a DJ in Nottingham, and I used to get the train up to Haçienda to see, I saw a certain ratio there, I saw the Ruti column, I saw a factory band called Crispy Ambulance, if anyone remembers that name, and I saw, and often I would go to Haçienda and it was empty. There would be 20, 30 people, mainly blokes with fringes and long overcoats on. And I'm sure, looking around here, I bet there's a few men in here who used to have that look. I used to have a fringe, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, full on, as long as Phil O'Keefe, yeah. And so years later, when I got to know some of the people involved and ended up working there, I remember one Friday night in 1988, I'm in the DJ box, and Mike's DJing, and I open the door, and it's Hookie and Rob Gretton, who was the manager of Euro. He was the character there with the glasses, kept pushing the glasses up, and Tony Wilson, and they all come to the DJ box, and I'm like, hey, all right, and I'm thinking, what's going on?
Yeah.
This is like surreal for me. And then of course a few weeks later, I'm like, no, fuck off, you're not coming in here, you know.
Yeah.
So it was a real thrill for me.
Did the party continue for you at the Haçienda after you finished DJing? Did you stick around? Did you DJ and leave, or did you hang around? Was there after parties?
No, there was always something going on. We'd go to a place in Hume called the Kitchen, which was 2 flats knocked into one. Literally, somebody just got a jackhammer and knocked the wall down. And then there was always like Mike. Mike had a place in Hume as well. I used to go back there. Later on, Mike had a flat on top of the Armadale Centre, which was bizarre. I used to go back there as well. But there was always something going on.
Yeah.
But you know the irony, the last night in Hacienda, I wasn't there. Mike wasn't there either. Because nobody knew it was the last night. I mean, Tony knew it was the last night because he came down and did that speech. But nobody knew it was the last night. So if we'd known, if I'd known I'd been there. But the irony is, all the years that I worked at Hacienda from 88 to 1987, I lived in Nottingham, I lived in London, and then I moved to Manchester the week after the Hacienda closed. because Kiss, if you remember, I'm sure you remember Kiss, there was Kiss 102 Manchester and Kiss 105 in Yorkshire. They started in Manchester, and I moved up to do the afternoon show Monday to Friday, thinking, well, we'll have to travel so far to Hacienda, I think.
Just touching on what I said earlier, the scene then and the scene now. I mean, I was on the scene then, I'm 42 now, and I still go to the odd Hacienda Classical and stuff like that, but there's such an energy in those days. Do you think that still goes on now for an 18-year-old? Do you think there's somewhere that they go and they have something like that? Because I just don't see it.
I don't think there are lots of great clubs. I mean, if you look at what the Warehouse Project do in Manchester, that is fantastic. I wasn't going to do any plugs, but I will do. There's a Hacienda night at church in Leeds on the 31st of March. Tickets available from your regular ticket sellers. There are great clubs that kind of have echoes of Hacienda in the layout and how basic everything is. Because Hacienda looked amazing, but it was pretty basic inside.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's that focal point of the Hacienda anymore. You know, when Hacienda closed, the focus kind of went to Liverpool and Cream. In fact, the day after the Hacienda closed, Cream wasn't phoning me going, will you come and play for us now? And I was like, well, I suppose I can now. I mean, I couldn't, they always tried to get me to do something in the 90s, but I said, I can't, I'll get lynched.
Yeah.
But when Hacienda closed, a month later I was doing monthly Fridays at Cream. So you had Cream in Liverpool. Yeah. And then of course then you had Gatecrash in Sheffield, you had Ministry of Sound in London, where I used to do Friday nights at Ministry of Sound. So you did have those focal points, but all those clubs I mentioned, the people behind them will freely admit that the Hacienda was their blueprint. But you have to realise that the blueprint for Hacienda was actually clubs in New York, because New Order went to New York and recorded albums there and worked with Arthur Baker. And so they were going to the Loft and they were going to Paradise Garage and came back, so that there was that New York influence.
Yeah.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, everything's connected, really.
Yeah. So when it was coming to the end of the Hacienda time, it was affected by gang trouble, which they touched on in the film. Were you aware of that at the time? Did it affect you?
Well, see, I never lived in Manchester when I was at Hacienda, but and when you're in DJ box, all you can see is the dance floor. We were 20, me and Mike, 20 feet in the air, and all we were concerned about is the dance floor, because underneath. In fact, actually, there's a question that you didn't ask. How many people here went to the Hacienda? See, that's a good lot. So underneath the balcony, there was like all kinds of shenanigans going on in there.
Yeah.
And we were told that something had happened, but we didn't really weren't aware of it. And if I went to the toilet, which you had to sometimes, the amount of drink that was going through, I couldn't go to the toilet by the stage because you just get mobbed.
Yeah.
So Mike and I used to go to the toilet in the basement down this big old lift. So I wasn't really aware of what was going on. It was just, I remember one Friday, the place emptied about midnight, and we're like, well, we've completely lost our skills now.
Yeah.
We thought it was us. Yeah.
Yeah. So you say that you couldn't go, sorry, did someone? No. You say you couldn't go to the toilet in the club because of people would probably swamp you. Do you still get that now? Can you do that in a random restaurant, or someone come over and say, can I have a selfie?
So yeah, you do get a lot of requests for selfies, which I'm always happy to oblige if it's the right moment. So sometimes just before I'm about to play, because you're trying to get in the zone, get your head in the right space, and it's like park it, and then the phone won't work. I know, Android, Apple, Windows phones. I know how they all work. I know, it's the bloody phone, but there you go, see you later. But no, selfies are annoying, but I'm happy to do them. My wife doesn't like them.
I've got selfies.
Well, she doesn't like, my wife doesn't mind the selfies of me with big fat sweaty bald look. But not all the selfies are with big.
Well, I was going to say, I've got a selfie with you from the toilets at the Ministry of Sound, so...
Yeah, a lot of blokes,
me.
I remember a lot of blokes do selfies in toilets.
You finished?
No, they don't even wait. They don't wait.
So, I'm trying not to sort of stick just on the Haçienda. The final question about the Haçienda, we'll probably come back to it, but when it shut down, a lot of memorabilia and stuff was taken and auctioned off and everything. Have you got anything from that?
I've got lots actually.
Yeah.
Peter Hook stitched me right up at the auction because he did a couple of the auctions because he was there and it was, quite light-hearted. And he said to me, right, we've got this big bit of dance floor. It's huge, like, really big dance floor. And Hookie signed it and Tony Wilson signed it. And he goes, I reckon we'll get a lot for this. So what I'm going to do is go, who'll start the bidding? I want you to put your hand up and go 500 quid. And then I'll get the bidding going. Like, brilliant. So, well, that piece of wood is in my garage. But on reflection, it was worth it. It really was worth it. So, apart from when I stubbed my toe on it.
So when we talk about selfies and stuff like that, obviously you do a lot of travelling, especially weekends, which you have done for a long, long time now. How's that?
34 years. I started DJing. Well, 34 years. I started DJing in 1984. Didn't even want to be a DJ.
Yeah.
It just, I wasn't even asked. I was told by I worked in a record shop in Nottingham, and the owner of the record shop bought a nightclub, and he didn't ask me. He told me I was going to be a DJ, and I played in a band. I said, well, I can't be a DJ, I play in a band. Well, if you're not going to DJ, you're not working in a record shop. When I was 19,
Yeah.
and I loved my job. It was the best job in the world, working in a record shop. So I did it, and after a while I thought, yeah, this is all right, it is. And I'm still doing it now.
Yeah. So how does that affect your family life with the travelling? You're obviously away a lot of the time, travelling.
Well, it can be difficult. I've got 13-year-old twin boys and a very, very understanding wife. My wife actually used to be my agent.
Right.
So we used to travel the world together, getting up to no good. And then we had twins, so, she'll still come, but she can't come. She was going to come tonight, but she's going to get busy. But I have a rule these days, very sensible. Less than 2 hours from home, drive there and drive home. And if it's more than 2 hours, get the last possible train. Never get the last train, sorry, the second last train. And the second last flight there, and then not the first train, maybe the second or third train home.
Yeah. And does your wife have a love of house music as well?
Well, yes. She does. Yeah, she does. But Bananarama. Yeah. Nothing wrong with Bananarama, though. Personally.
No.
Robert De Niro was waiting. Great tune.
So you've got a lot of stories to tell, which we can't possibly fit in tonight, because I've heard your stories, which put me at ease a little bit for tonight. But have you ever thought about writing an autobiography? Have you ever been approached about that?
It has been discussed many a time, and I've even had publishers talk to me, but I can't write an autobiography because, for many reasons, my current wife is my second wife, and final, I'm not having any more. My mum and dad are still alive.
Yeah.
And I hope they are for many years. Some of the people I've worked with in the past, we have had massive fallouts, but now we're all friends again.
Yeah.
If I'm going to write an autobiography, it has to be totally honest and accurate.
Yeah.
And I don't want to fall out with my wife, and I don't want to fall out
Yeah.
with people I'm friends with again. And I think my mom would be appalled.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a quick story about my mom, who used to be a nurse, and when Haçienda started making the front pages of tabloids, you might remember that, and there was several incidents and really kind of over-the-top headlines on the front of the, all the tabloids. And my mum and dad live in Fife in Scotland, and their tabloid of choice, I don't do tabloids, but their tabloid of choice is Daily Record, and there was something about drugs and Haçienda on the front page. My mum's on the phone going, "You don't take drugs, do you?" It's like, "Mum, I'm the DJ at Haçienda. How do you think I could DJ if I was taking drugs?" "Yes, I thought that. I just thought that to us."
I think in Marco, me being a chef, in Marco B.O. White's autobiography, on the first page, he says, "This is a little account of my life, but on the day that I die, my actual autobiography will be published."
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, what I am doing, but it's finding the time. I read a book. Has anyone read a book by John Niven called Kill Your Friends? It's an absolutely brilliant book, and it is a fictionalised version of his job as an A&R person for London Records. And I remember when I lived in London, I used to go hang out at all the record companies, and his account of the debauched life of a record company executive are pretty accurate. And when I read that, I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a fictionalised version.
Yeah.
So then you can sprinkle a bit of fairy dust and make things sound a bit more glamorous than they were. Because I think that film, everyone goes, "Oh, it must be really glamorous being a DJ." Well, in the 80s and 90s, hanging out with them lot, it wasn't at all glamorous. It was exactly that.
Yeah.
People would hit you, people would punch you, there were fights, there were just copious amount of drugs that didn't do anything much for the creative process, really, except make you fall out with people. So a fictionalised version of that would be good.
Yeah.
And then when people say, "Is that supposed to be so-and-so?" They go, "It's fiction."
Yeah. Fair enough, yeah.
But it's finding the time to do it. I've got copious notes.
So people nights like tonight and old school sort of reunion nights, people my age and older seem to be flocking to them. They seem to be really massive. Places like we talked about earlier, Clockwork Orange and Haçienda, they're sold out, and it must be strange for you behind the decks, looking out the crowd here and seeing people who are 30 years later.
I don't think it is strange to see. First of all, tonight, for once on a Friday night, I'm not the oldest person in the room, which is quite good. No, but I've got a theory, right? This generation is the first generation, I think, that hasn't properly grown up. See, I remember my dad and my mum in their early 40s coming to the Garage Club in Nottingham, right? Because they wanted to see me DJing, because my mom used to be a singer in my grandpa's big band, his orchestra, right? And she always said, "Oh, you're doing modern equivalent of what your grandpa was." So they came to the Garage Club in Nottingham, and my mum and dad were in their early 40s, and they just were like fish out of water. It just really stood out. I didn't know what to do, and my mum was all kind of dressed up. And, "What are you doing, Mum?" "I'm going out." "Well, not like that, And my dad had slacks and a blazer on, and I'm like, "Oh, Jesus Christ." But then I reached my early 40s and realised that I was nothing like my dad when Mum and Dad were in their early 40s, and I'm guessing that that's a common theme from everyone here.
Yeah.
So acid house and ecstasy have had a lasting effect, because this generation, well, you know what I mean. This generation, if you're 40 plus and you discovered that little magic pill, like so many of us in the room, I guess, probably did, and Acid House, and you made that trip, like so many people did in West Yorkshire, over the Pennines, to the Haçienda. That has had a lasting effect.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the ecstasy, because 24 hours it's gone, right?
So we get to find out about the lasting effects, probably.
Well, that's another thing. We are going to find out about the lasting effects in about the next 20 years, I'd imagine. But so what I'm saying is, when I started DJing in the 80s, if you saw anyone over 40 or even 35 in a club, you go, "What are they doing here?" Now it's just the norm.
Yeah.
And some gigs I do, so for example, you mentioned Clockwork Orange. When I do a Clockwork Orange night in London, everyone's over 40. But most weekends, the partners I play to, half of them are under 30, half of them are over 30.
Yeah.
And it's just the norm.
Yeah.
You know? And for someone who's over 40, it's quite good to be not the oldest person in the room like that.
So we've got to talk about Haçienda Classical, because that's become massive. How did that come about, and what was your involvement in it?
That came about by accident, really. Just like a daft idea. We should. How it came about. We used to do Haçienda night, club nights at Sankey's in Manchester, and we noticed over the past 5 years that the crowd were getting younger and younger, right? And there was less people who actually used to go to Haçienda coming to Haçienda club nights at Sankey's, and that's because children, proper jobs, so you can't go out raving every weekend like you used to, right? Unless it's your job, and even then I'm not raving, I'm just playing great music. And so if the crowd are getting younger, then your job as a DJ is to play to the crowd, right? So you start playing to more contemporary stuff, which is as a DJ who's still working every weekend after 34 years, that's great. You want to I became a DJ to play new music alongside kind of classic music, right? So the crowd were getting younger, but the few people who used to go to Haçienda who would come would start whinging. I mean really whinging. Okay. Come on, man, get some proper classics on. that was the women as well. No, the women. Get some proper vocals on. And you're like, yeah, look, the place is fucking jumping. Just don't worry, we will. And so we're sitting, me, Mike Picker, and Peter Hook, and a guy called Fletch, who's the Haçienda manager, was sat in a bar in a hotel at like 5 o'clock in the morning or something. Going, we need to keep people happy, right? Haçienda as a brand has kind of developed, and you've got a whole new generation want to come in here. It's what we do. How can we keep people happy? And we're all drinking, and then we're being told, you got to leave the bar, we've got to set this up for breakfast in a minute. Yeah, right. And as we're finishing our drinks and going, the lift door opened, and I walked two musicians, with one with a cello and one with another violin or something. And one of us, we can't remember who, was like, "That's what we should do, booking classical concert." And we all got on the lift. I went, "Fucking hell, you know what? We should."
Yeah.
And it was Peter Hook who kind of ran with the idea, because when we do Haçienda Classical, there's 100 people on stage, and the costs are just astronomical. So Hookie made it happen, and so Mike Pickering and I chose the tracks, which was actually quite easy, because we thought 20 tracks, so we both came on a list of 20 tracks. 10 of them were the same, so the other 10 we just had a proper debate about.
Yeah.
And then I ignored what he said, and then created. When I thought I wanted to make a classical version, like a DJ mix, so continuous, because everyone's like, "Oh no, that's not going to work." But I said, "No, let's try it." So I created the mix of 20 tracks, and then a guy called Tim Crooks scored and arranged it, and then of course they come back and said, there's lots of stuff the orchestra can't do. So I went to the studio and recreated the stuff that the orchestra couldn't do, and then we made a backing track that everyone can listen to. If you see me at Haçienda Classical, I've got 2 pairs of headphones and monitors because I listen to so many things. And then we rehearsed it 2 days before the first show,
Right.
which was really scary because orchestras don't need to rehearse. They get the music and they go, right, this is what I'm doing. And it just worked. We didn't know it was going to work. And then we did it. It was a one-off at Bridgewater Hall. Did anyone here go to the first one? It was a bit of a shambles, to be honest, because nobody could hear the orchestra. And because we were expecting everyone like this, sitting around going, oh, a classical concert, get plotted up and listen to it. It's like a rave.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people that perhaps had a bit of well, I think a few people popped a few pills before. And me and Mike kept looking at each other going like, what the fuck? But because we'd sold out, we decided to do a second one. And we got the sound right for the second one. Next thing we know, we're doing the Royal Albert Hall. Next thing we know, we're doing festivals, we're doing a whole tour, 16 dates.
Yeah. Wow.
And we thought, oh, we're on something here. And then Hookie said, right, we're going to do it again next year. And I said, right, it's got to be a new set list. But Hookie, who'd already spent a fortune, is like, no, it's going to cost more money. So we can't do the same thing, because I remember it was the Brighton show in 2016, 4th or 5th show, and about 15 minutes in, I'm going like, no, this is all wrong, it's all wrong. It has to be different, it has to be better. And of course, I kept that to myself. I didn't want to like upset the apple cart, because once you score and arrange it, you can't change it, it's set in stone. So I then spent December, January talking to everyone, picking new songs, then ignoring what they said, and then put together a new mix, which we got scored and arranged. And did anyone see the show last year?
Yeah.
Was it better than the previous year? Much better, more euphoric. Smack bang in between your eyes from the beginning, because the first show was kind of building up like a DJ mix. This one was bang.
So you got to the next
bang, 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 bang.
You got to the next level this
Bang! What? No, so I'm currently working on this year's show, which will be a new show again, and the 20 tracks that I'm thinking of using I've whittled down to 58. So we're going to keep some of the ones from last year, because some of those songs are just timeless, and people would be annoyed if we didn't have that.
Yeah.
We're bringing back 2 or 3 from the first year, but then the rest of it will be new. And I can't tell you what's in there, but there will be records that were made long before the Haçienda ever opened, and records that have been released this century. So it's a real, it's bigger. It will be bigger and better.
Yeah.
I hope it is, touch wood. Otherwise, you'll remind me I said that.
So obviously, people who like house music see you as Graeme part of the DJ, classic DJ. There's a lot more strings to the bow that you're involved in.
Did you get a singer in there?
Singer? Well, I've heard the
Did anyone see me sing Blue Monday?
Yeah. That's on the list actually. And also that you played keyboard at the Haçienda once in a band, is that true? Before you DJ?
Before I was a DJ, I played in a band, that's what I wanted to do. Played saxophone and sang, and a bit of guitar. And when I became a DJ, I realised that I was going to make more money. Because anyone here who's been in a band knows that you have to hire a PA and a transit man, and set the PA up, and then pay the drummer's girlfriend to do the door, and then put all the PA away. And at the end of the night, when you've paid for everything and split the money, you've got a £5 or 20 quid or something.
Yeah.
In the 80s, I think.
Yeah.
When I started DJing, I got 25 quid all night.
Yeah.
And I was doing 3 gigs a week. So I thought, I'm going to do this for a while. So I did it for a while. I'm still doing it now. So to be on a stage with an orchestra is only really going back to what I did before. I used to play in the school orchestra as well. Now, Lancaster sound check in 2016, yeah, he was flying in from some far-flung exotic place, and Mike was watching Man City v Arsenal in his hotel room. So I was like, well, I'll do the bloody sound check, because you have to set everything up, make sure everything works, and just make sure everything works. So when they obviously did a run through, they got to Blue Monday, I'm like, this is a song that's so important to me. I've kind of grew up with that song. I remember playing it at the garage in Nottingham and playing Haçienda. I toured North America with New Order in 1989,
Right. Wow.
and was on the stage while they did Blue Monday. So I just ran down the front, grabbed the mic, oh, this is a sound check, and did Blue Monday just for a laugh.
Right.
So the last show of 2016, we're all sat around waiting for the bus to take us to the festival. It's in Sunderland. And we get a message, Hookie's not coming. He's stuck in Italy. His flight's delayed, he's not going to come. And of course we're like, well, hang on a minute. Blue Monday's like one of the key songs. And Tim, the conductor, goes to me, you'll have to do it. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. But then, after much cajoling from the choir, it's a gospel choir, they're like, none of us can do it, we're a gospel choir. Blue Monday, how the hell can a gospel singer sing Blue Monday?
Yeah.
So I just had several beers. Mike, by the way, Mike was like, fuck off, you. And when he said that, I went, no, I'm going to do it. Sorry for swearing everyone, but... And then I just walked down in front and did it, and oh my God, it was brilliant. This year, Hookie's been on tour with his band, so I've done it more than Hookie this year. And honestly, such a buzz. If anyone came to the Apollo,
Yes.
the last show, I apologise for having it up a bit. I asked for a spotlight to follow me down. I high-fived Yvonne, high-fived some of the musicians, high-fived, and he actually took the mic off the stand and paraded around the stage. But that's what I did before I was a DJ, I was a singer.
Yeah.
What else do I do? Well, radio broadcaster. I'm currently making a documentary. And I can't tell you what it's about because we're trying to get it commissioned. And if anyone here works for a TV company, well, I'll tell you who's in it, see if you can guess. If anyone here works for a TV company or a film or commissions films, come and see me later. But Peter Hook's in it, Roetta's in it, Johnny Marr's in it, Clint Boone's in it, Melanie Williams, who sings Sub Ain't No Love, she's in it. Marshall Jefferson's in it, I'm in it, a guy called Birchie used to play keyboards with them people's in it, Pickering will be in it, Noel Gallagher's going to be in it. It's not about Manchester and it's not about music. Well, because there are loads of documentaries about Manchester and loads of documentaries about music. And I wanted to do something that was a bit different. But all those people I've mentioned have got something in common.
Yeah, fair enough.
Can anyone guess what it's about? No. No.
So I've got a few questions to close.
I'm also a senior lecturer in creative media and technology as well.
Something you enjoy?
I love it actually.
Yeah.
The UV great bag. A student went, no. I just look like him. Now anyway, about your assessment.